There are places in this world where the line between the living and the dead seems to blur, places where strange things happen and mysteries remain unsolved. One such place is a small town in the middle of nowhere, where a terrifying story unfolds that still sends chills down the spines of anyone who hears it. But be warned, what you're about to hear isn't fiction. This is something real, something that still haunts those who lived through it. It all started in 1982, in a small rural town that had a reputation for being quiet and peaceful. People went about their daily lives without much to worry about. That was until strange occurrences began to happen. A few families living near the edge of town started reporting unusual sounds at night. Doors creaked open by themselves, objects moved on their own, and the air became thick with an unexplained, ominous presence. At first, the townspeople dismissed it. After all, this was just a small, tight-knit community, and nothing ever really happened here. But as the reports grew, so did the fear. No one wanted to be the first to admit that something unnatural might be happening, but there were whispers that something was wrong. Something was there in the dark, something that wasn't supposed to be, and it was only getting worse. Then, one night, it all came to a head. A local man named John, known for his bravery, decided to investigate. He had heard the rumors, but had always remained skeptical. Determined to uncover the truth, John ventured into the woods behind the old farmhouse where the disturbances were most frequent. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and his courage, he entered the house that everyone had been talking about. He would soon regret his decision. John's wife, Mary, became frantic when he didn't return that night. She spent hours searching, calling out for him, but it was as if he had vanished without a trace. The next morning, she called the local authorities. They combed the area, but there was no sign of him. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. No tracks, no broken branches, nothing to suggest where he might have gone. The mystery deepened. Days passed, and John's disappearance became the talk of the town. Some speculated that he had simply run off, tired of his life. Others believed the stories of the haunted house, but no one could explain the strange events that had taken place. The police were baffled. No clues, no answers. That was until a week later when something eerie happened. Mary received a letter from John. The handwriting was unmistakable, but the words were chilling. The letter was short, only a few lines, but it sent a wave of terror through Mary's heart. "They found me," it read. "I don't know if I'll make it out of here. There's something inside this house. It's not what we think. It's waiting, and it wants me." The letter was postmarked from the town, but the authorities had no idea where it came from. It was as if it had appeared from nowhere. Mary was left with more questions than answers. A search party was organized to find John, but they found nothing. No sign of him in the woods, no evidence at the farmhouse, nothing. The townspeople grew more uneasy, and rumors began to spread. People started talking about the house again, about the strange happenings, the whispers in the dark. Some claimed to have heard voices calling out in the night. Others said they saw shadows moving within the windows. No one knew what to believe anymore. Weeks passed without any progress, and the town slowly returned to its normal rhythm. But there was one person who never stopped searching: Mary. She couldn't shake the feeling that John was still out there, that he was somehow trapped, waiting to be found. One night she decided to visit the farmhouse herself, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she would find the answers she was desperately searching for. When Mary arrived at the house, the air was thick with a sense of dread. The wind howled, and the old wooden structure creaked and groaned under the pressure. She stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The floorboards creaked beneath her feet as she ventured deeper into the house, each step feeling heavier than the last. She could almost feel something watching her, something waiting for her to make a mistake. Mary made her way upstairs, each room more oppressive than the last. She had a feeling that she was not alone. There was a presence here, something ancient and malevolent. As she entered the final room, her flashlight flickered and died. She was plunged into darkness. Panic surged in her chest, but she didn't turn back. She had to find him. She had to know the truth. But as she reached for her phone, something caught her eye. In the corner of the room, near the window, she saw a figure standing motionless. It was too dark to make out any details, but she could feel its eyes on her. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The figure didn't move, but she could hear a faint whisper like a voice calling her name. "Mary," it said softly. "Mary." The voice was eerily familiar. It sounded just like John. But how could it be him? He was missing, gone. Mary tried to speak, but her words caught in her throat. The figure stepped forward, and as it came into the light, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The face staring back at her was not John's. It was someone, or something, else. The eyes were hollow, dark pits that seemed to look right through her. And the smile, it wasn't a smile at all. It was twisted, grotesque. She stumbled backward in shock. Without thinking, Mary turned and ran from the room. She bolted down the stairs and out of the house, her heart racing. She didn't stop until she reached the edge of town. She was gasping for breath, trembling all over. But as she looked back at the farmhouse, she could see the faintest outline in one of the upstairs windows. A shadow, waiting, watching, following her every move. Mary didn't know what it was, but she knew it was something evil. The next morning, Mary went to the police. She told them everything she had seen. The figure, the voice, the twisted smile. But when the authorities went to investigate, they found nothing. The house was empty, just as it had always been. No signs of anyone, no shadow, no figure. It was as if Mary had imagined the entire thing, but she knew what she had seen. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't imagining things. As the days passed, strange things continued to happen around the town. People started hearing footsteps at night, doors opening and closing on their own. But it wasn't just the house that was affected. It seemed like the entire area was cursed. People began to avoid the woods, the old farmhouse, anything that felt connected to the mystery of John's disappearance. But the fear didn't stop there. It spread like an infection, infecting every corner of the town. One evening, a local historian named Dr. Thomas Bates decided to visit the farmhouse. He had heard the rumors but remained skeptical. After all, he was a man of science, and he didn't believe in ghosts or supernatural forces. But something about the house intrigued him. He couldn't resist. Armed with nothing but his knowledge of local history and a flashlight, he ventured inside. What he found would haunt him for the rest of his life. Dr. Bates spent hours inside the house, going through every room, documenting his findings. He didn't find anything unusual, at least, nothing that couldn't be explained away. But as he was about to leave, something caught his attention. A dusty old book on a shelf in the corner. It was old, bound in leather, and its pages were yellowed with age. He picked it up, opened it, and immediately felt a chill run down his spine. The book was filled with strange symbols, ancient writings that Dr. Bates couldn't understand. But there was something about it that felt wrong, like it was calling to him. As he flipped through the pages, he came across one that seemed to describe a ritual that could open a doorway between worlds, a doorway that could bring forth things from the other side, things that were never meant to cross over. And that's when he understood. The house wasn't just haunted. It was a portal, a gateway to something far darker than anyone could imagine. And it wasn't just John who had disappeared. He was part of something bigger, something much more sinister. The book was a key to unlocking that world, and Dr. Bates realized that he had just uncovered something that could change everything. He had no idea what he had unleashed, but he knew one thing for sure. It wasn't good. Dr. Bates tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic set in as he frantically tried to open it, but it was as if something was holding it shut. The house was alive, and it didn't want him to leave. He turned around and saw a shadow moving in the hallway. It wasn't human. It wasn't even close. The figure that stepped into the room was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was tall, gaunt, with eyes that glowed an unnatural shade of red. Dr. Bates stumbled backward, his heart racing. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure took another step forward, its movements jerky and unnatural. The air grew colder, and Dr. Bates could feel an overwhelming sense of dread wash over him. He had seen enough. He knew that the house was not just a place of death. It was a prison for things that should never have been released. He ran toward the window, desperate to escape, but the glass shattered as the figure reached out toward him. He was pulled back into the room, his body slamming against the floor. The figure loomed over him, its face a grotesque mask of twisted flesh. Its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. It reached out, and Dr. Bates knew that this was the end. The last thing he heard before everything went black was a low, guttural laugh. The next morning, the townspeople found the house empty again. No sign of Dr. Bates, no trace of the figure, just the eerie silence that had plagued the house for years. But the book was gone, as was any evidence that Dr. Bates had ever been there. The town went back to its normal routine, but the fear never truly went away. It lingered in the air, in the walls of the farmhouse, in the woods outside. No one was ever brave enough to go back. Years passed and the town moved on, but the house remained. The mysteries surrounding it continued to haunt those who had lived there, and rumors still circulated about the things that lived in the shadows. Some said they had seen figures lurking in the windows. Others claimed to have heard whispers on the wind, and there were those who still remembered Dr. Bates, John, and the horrible truth they had uncovered. But the worst part? The house still stands, silent, waiting. And it's not just a place. It's a doorway to something beyond our understanding, something that is still watching, still waiting, and still calling out to those brave or foolish enough to enter. The story doesn't end here. No, it's just the beginning. There are more questions than answers, and more horrors yet to be uncovered. And so, we ask you, the viewer, would you dare to spend a night in the house? Would you be brave enough to face the horrors that lurk within its walls? Or will you too be consumed by the dark presence that resides there? Whatever you choose, remember this. Once you've seen what's inside, there's no going back. The house may seem quiet now, but you can feel it, can't you? The sense that it's always there, waiting for the next curious soul to enter. It's not just a place. It's a curse that has lasted for decades, and will continue to haunt anyone who dares to step foot inside. The question is, will you be the next to fall victim to its twisted grip? The truth is out there, but it's not something that anyone should want to uncover. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. But for those who can't resist the pull of the unknown, the house remains. Silent, waiting, forever watching. And as long as it stands, the story will never truly end. So what do you think? Is this all just a story, a piece of local folklore that has been blown out of proportion over time? Or is there something more sinister at work? Something that has been lurking in the shadows all along? We may never know the full truth, but one thing is certain. The house will always be there, waiting for the next curious soul to come too close.